Hello, and welcome to my podcast, Gnosis, where we find out how we know what we know. Today's guest is Julie. She's a copywriter. We met on LinkedIn. She asked me a great question about what kind of hype music gets me excited. And that let me know that she wasn't a computer, that she's a human being, and she's got a really good personality. So, Julie, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and who you do it for?
Yes. So it is Juliet, by the way, not
Oh,
Julie.
Juliet, see, I'm
Yes,
already
no, that's
learning
okay.
better.
Yes, you're doing great. Copywriting. How do I know what I know, how I do it? Copywriting is just sales on paper. I feel like it's conversational for some people, it's educational for other people. For me, I like to bring a lot of entertainment to it. That's just kind of my personality. You'll find copywriters that are all about the science and information, and others that just want to kind of connect and conversate with people. And that's kind of what I do for my clients. And so I align myself with clients that are kind of looking for that.
That's great. So, how do you bring a sense of personality to your work if you're not a good writer?
If you're not a good
How,
writer, I would
correction.
say don't let that stop
Let,
you.
yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to talk over you. I guess
Sure.
that was a bad question. So I'm going to ask you a better question.
Okay.
If I'm a bad writer, how do I work with a copywriter to get better copy?
Yeah. Trust is huge there. I feel like if you know what your strengths are and you know someone else has that strength, some of it is with someone that takes a lot of time to get to know you. I have a specific process for that. So since I do so much personality driven things, I try to actually get a lot out of someone who feels like they aren't good at writing about themselves. And that comes through asking questions. Like I do a pretty thorough interview, and I ask a lot of questions that people might be like, well, this isn't directly related to like my product or my service. But if you
Hmm.
want to bring personality into it, I'm going to ask you what you love doing as a kid because that's part of you. What do you love doing on the weekends? Tell me about your family. Tell me about a hard thing that you had to do at work. Like, I think there's probably a lot of psychology background into it, even though I haven't studied that at all. But just through what I've learned through reading and writing good copy, it's bringing out just kind of that inner stuff into the copy. But I feel like that does take trust from the client to just kind of trust the process and see what happens. And usually after the first draft, they're like, whoa, I didn't know you could get so much out of me. And bring it into an awesome, website or email or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I often find that when I'm reading a script, I'm a filmmaker as well as an art director, um, or have been an art director. And what I'm always looking for is, do the people feel like someone I know, right?
Yeah.
Do the voices that are in on the page feel like I can see a person behind them more so than just a face talking words, right?
Yes.
And it sounds to me what you're looking to do is to actually put the me behind the words that you write. Is that good encapsulation?
100%. Yes, I don't come to my clients as like I'm a great writer and I'm just going to make it sound amazing because I am good at writing. That's not the goal at all. The goal is always for it to sound exactly like them. So I am more like a ghostwriter in that sense where I kind of want to get into their brain, pretend I'm them, and then kind of, try to think through, well, how would they write it if they were just talking to a friend or they were talking to a prospective client? Because a lot of times the copy is not just to sound good for sounding good sake, it's to make a sale. And to save that person time from having to be on all those calls, explaining what they do. So a website is a great example of that. If I go to somebody's website and they've explained their process, maybe their price point, how they do all the things, their background, how they got into it, I am pretty much ready to know if they're the person for me or not. Whereas if they don't have a website and I have to get on a call with them and it takes them an hour to tell me all of that, that takes a lot of time, on both ends. Whereas if it's captured in the copy, then that's kind of a good starting point.
Right. Yeah, apologize. I will switch to my FaceTime camera.
Okay, yes. I was like, the screen has left, but I'm going to keep talking. The show
Yeah.
must go on in my head.
Yeah. And of course, I arranged everything for my 50 millimeter Zeiss lens that has beautiful bokeh. And now you're just seeing all of my messy mind here. Uh, that's the reason why you want to have fast optical glass is you can control how much you see in your
There you go.
environment. Um, eh,
It's
oh
funny
well.
say that you say it is a mess. It does not look like a mess to me, but I'm actually kind of trying to get messier in my office because when I got a home office, I kind of tried to make it look like cute and aesthetic, and I'm not liking it. Like I want to repaint my walls white and then just throw up a bunch of like newspaper scrappings and collages and like inspirational stuff because I feel like I have not used this space as like a creative expression and I really need to do that. I'm ready to make a mess.
Well, I mean, I have, I guess I could go that way, and then you can kind of see that's a short film that I worked on with a young man that I mentored, and he invited me in with a bunch of his filmmaker friends, and we made that short for a 48-hour film festival. And then over there is a piece of original art by Annalie Diego, who is an architect, artist, pop artist. And so, I'm glad I get to share this. And I haven't started doing anything on my walls except for over there.
Yeah.
I plan on making it not I'm plan on making my space organized,
Hmm.
but I'm not an organized person, so it's taken me a little bit.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I had previous jobs where I was supposed to be the organizer, and so I learned to organize, but kind of underneath the surface, I was like, I'm still a total mess. So just don't look too deep. I can be organized for you because you're paying me to do it, but if you
Yes.
actually look at my desk, it's a little crazy.
Yeah, it's funny when I was an editor and I started working for post houses. I had to get very organized about how I controlled my file structure. And I learned the system, and then once I learned a file folder approach, then I would just copy and paste that folder, and I'd always have a default
Yeah.
organizational structure. And then inside the subfolders, I could be a mess
Hmm.
because I had a way to organize how to find what I needed.
Yeah.
And then Apple invented the search bar in the OS. And I've given all of my structure up because I can go, oh, I just can look for that file name. Except for
Yeah.
now, I have to remember all the file names that want to look for. So
Yeah.
now I'm back to wanting structure again. It's a full circle loop of
Yes. I am terrible about working out of my downloads
yes.
because like I seriously just work out of my downloads. That's pretty much where everything is and I am not great at organizing it and I still work that way, but I had a job one time where the IT people were switching to whatever and they did not copy over any of my downloads because they're thinking like it's downloads. What do you need that for? And I'm like that's where my life is and they're like okay. But yeah, like that's how the search bar is because I feel like sometimes when I do try to organize and put stuff in folders, I don't actually remember what it is or where it is. And I end up searching anyway because you can search within the folders. And I was thinking about that as far as my own business. I have my clients, their folders are pretty clear. I know who they are, but anything in my own business, I used to have like a strategy folder and then I would never remember what that folder was for. So now I just have one that's like Juliet's corner, and then anything that has to do with me is in there, and it's unorganized once it's there, but at least I know I can find it in there.
Right. Yeah. The only difficulty comes in is like as long as you're producing new work, you can maintain a very sloppy structure. It only comes into
Yes.
play if you've got to reconstitute an old project.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm all about the copy and paste, whether it's like a contract or proposal, something like that. So I have a standard, and I have a VA now who
Oh,
thankfully. Oh, go ahead.
no, I just realized I've been staring at my camera, but I'm actually supposed to be looking here at this camera. So
Oh, gotcha.
I've been
I
teaching
think
myself.
I'm so used to seeing those clips of people that are just kind of like a talking head when they're in interviews, so it didn't even gauge to me. Um, but I have a VA who's extremely strategic, and it is a lifesaver for me because she can deal with my crazy. And I used to be the admin who would have to deal with somebody else's crazy. And I was always like, why can't they just be more clear? Like, this is so complicated. And now I'm in that position, and I'm just like, I'm so sorry to my VA. I'm like, I'm just going to brain dump. And then she makes it happen. And I'm like, okay, cool. Thank you so much. Like, I really didn't realize, but it
So
helps me to embrace the unorganized. And I like that.
yeah, I found that I've had to work for a lot of ADHD leadership or people that
Yep.
have dyslexia, but they were at the right place at the right time and someone believed in them. So they got a financial support that wouldn't come to a traditional business person.
Yeah.
And so I've always had to translate the completely nonlinear thought process and then structure it and present it in a linear fashion. And inevitably, what that client will say is, wow, that totally makes sense. That's exactly what I said, but it
Yeah.
wasn't in the arrangement that they said it. Right.
Hmm.
But that's I don't know if I've now learned to be ADHD or if it was because I've always had a learning disability, and so I was able to translate them. I'm a translator of their thinking structure.
Yeah.
But now, because I don't have a translator for me, I'm a self-employed business person. I'm having to do all of that. So, like, there's no offload of someone to help make sense of what I'm trying to
Yes.
do.
Yeah. Yeah. I am self-diagnosed ADHD. Like, I've never gotten an evaluation. I don't necessarily want to be on specific medication, and I'm not good at going and making appointments to go do those things. But I think I learned pretty quickly, especially when out on my own, that it was like literally impossible for me to be productive. And I looked up more, ADHD things and was like, this sounds exactly like me. And it was very validating because I always felt like I need to find my routine that's like my perfect exercise routine that I do for 50 years, my perfect job that I do for 50 years, my the restaurant down the corner and the coffee. But like, I had in my mind that everybody was living this like standard routine perfect life, and I could never do it. Anytime I try to start something like that, then I immediately hated it. Like, once I chose to join, like a certain community or a gym or whatever, like I would then immediately rebel. But I realized different tools, like there's tools that'll help me for maybe like 6 to 12 weeks. And then I'm like hyper organized and like I'm doing amazing. And then that tool doesn't work anymore. And so then I just switch it to something else. So I feel like I live in a very like cyclical method of working in life now. And sometimes I can look at somebody else's problems and like organize it to death. And then when it comes back to mine, I'm like, I could do
Yes,
this. But that's
yes.
exactly and I'm not even like segueing this intentionally, but that is sometimes what the copywriting process is like, because I talk to a client who's just like, I have all these thoughts. I know that I need this. This needs to happen, but I
Mhm.
can't sit down and write it. And I'm like, I got you. So I feel like maybe we're all just in this world of helping each other get organized in different processes along the way.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of us, right?
Yeah.
I have a lot of ideas. We can realize those ideas together. And if it's us, then we feel like we have a sense of belonging, right?
Yes.
Um, you know, I don't know where I was going with that. This is one of those times where my mind just chased a squirrel and I lost it
I love it
all what I was
though.
doing.
It sounds like one of those fancy quotes like above a sunset of like, we have belonging. I like it. So that's great. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that's
My
the go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, when I just got off a meeting with my VA right before this and talked through like all of my next few ideas for my business, and how I was like, I'm sorry, I was like, I always come to these meetings thinking like I'm gonna give my VA some tasks to do, and then instead I just talk about a bunch of things and she leaves with like one task. And she said, oh no, it's okay. She said, that's why I'm an implementer and you're a visionary. And I was like, I'm a visionary. Like, I felt so validated to be a visionary with these great big ideas. And in reality, I'm like, I'm going to extend my timelines. Like, it's, just kind of a small thing, but I'm like, I'll take that. I'm going to take that.
Yeah, the tyranny of managing your own time. You know, when I mean, I've always when I was a kid, I structured my time fine and I found that whatever I did was perfect for me. And my
Yeah.
parents did not like my level of commitment to chores. So um but as an adult, with the military, lot of structure, lot of structure, lot of structure. The beauty about structure is it gives you a vector, right? If you
Yeah.
know where you want to go, structure allows you to scale the wall and get over. But structure also conditions you to only think in a unitary direction. And then I spent most of my creative career trying not to stay on a unitary direction, so that I could pull in the most creative ideas. And then the confusing part is like I can do all the work for a branding campaign, a concept. It's this octopus monster of a thing when you're doing
Yeah.
something like that. That when you start getting, you get this piece and then this piece and then this piece. And by the time you're done with the plan, the strategery, to borrow a Bushism, um, then you're exhausted and it's
Hmm.
and you're bored because you're like, I've been working on this for 6 months. The world
Yeah.
hasn't seen it even for a day, and I'm already feeling like I need to move on to the next great idea. But someone has to execute it, right?
Yes.
So how have you what strategies have you found to tame the octopus monster of ideas that you have?
Yeah. That's a great question. I feel like I'm working on that in a few different ways. One of them, probably the most clear and I guess big one in my business, is to set deadlines for revisions because
Hmm.
that's where I keep tripping up as far as my workload. Because the first draft, I'm like, woo, the first draft is great. That's where like all the, huge work is. But sometimes revisions can take 2 seconds. Other times they can take like 3 hours. So once I'm like neck deep in another project, and then I have to, come up for air to work on another project that I, in my head, kind of felt done with, even though revisions are always part of the process,
Right.
it's hard for me to kind of jerk back to that. So I'm trying to work on extending my overall timeline of the project that includes revisions, but also has kind of clear like cutoffs, like this needs to happen so that then I can be done and not feel like I have tentacles surrounding me of revisions of projects that are never ending. So that's one of them. And then time management wise, I feel like I am getting better at putting my ideas on a task list, so that they're not scattered with, you know, like post-it notes everywhere. I put them on my task list and then I try to put it on my calendar like within a week. Um, and so I think I'm just getting better at kind of splitting the atoms and seeing, you know, what does this project really entail? What does this idea really entail? Because sometimes I'll be like, oh, I need to redo my services or I need to update my website. And that sounds like a very, you know, small task. But then when I look into it, it's kind of like four moving pieces. Like giving, like changing my deadline process means that I need to be clear upfront with my proposals. So, like my first interaction with my client, it means that I need to change some things on my website because right now I do have my signature offer, which is the copy cruise, but I think I'm going to change that to something that looks a little bit different. So that's like a website update, but it also means that my project management system needs to change to like
Hmm.
have that looking correct. So I think I'm trying to just be more realistic on, does this idea take, 5 minutes, or is it something that I need to break down into like a 12-step program that might, I'm going to need a lot of support behind.
Right.
Um, and then other time management stuff, I'm really trying to bring more fun into it because I know that we get really disciplined and like, well, I'm always distracted. I need to time block and I need more accountability. But one of the things that I have started embracing as an entrepreneur is making sure that I'm having fun. And
Hmm.
sometimes that means that I will go sit on my couch in my living room. And if I have an easy enough task to do in front of the TV, I will watch TV while I'm doing it. And I don't care if that is heresy because I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. I decide how I spend my time. If I'm going to have more fun doing this and I'm still going to get it done and the quality is not going to be changed whatsoever, then I'm going to do that. That's what I came here to do. And then I kind of got stuck into like making sure I was the most disciplined, structured person of all time. And I'm like, that's not working. Let me enjoy entrepreneurship too. So
Yeah.
that's
I
part of it too.
Yeah, that I find that I have to, because when you're an entrepreneur or self-employed or creative, right? Because all those things are one thing.
Yeah.
Um, you are the product and you are your employee, right?
Yeah.
Until you get to a space where you can have employees and you can then structure becomes very important because it's not about you anymore managing
Hmm.
yourself. It's about managing other people and respecting the fact that they have lives. So that's why
Yeah.
structure is great. Um, in respect to that, one of the things I have always found as a creative delivering a product for someone is that they don't necessarily understand that a creative is working 24 hours a day. Like if I
Yeah.
have stopped working on your project 2 hours ago because I got to switch to this other thing, my brain is still actually thinking about your project. Even when I go to sleep at night, that's normally my best way to solve problems is I work
Yeah.
on it and I beat my head into the wall until I get a bruise. And then I go, this hurts. And then I
Yeah.
stop and I go take a nap or I go to sleep. And then when I wake up in the morning, I feel like the problem's solvable. And
Hmm.
then the solution normally presents itself because I did all the hard work of not understanding and then I allowed my brain to do something.
Yeah.
So I think it's always important to constantly reward yourself as a creative or self-employed or as an entrepreneur that if I'm going to do a workaday job, someone's paying me for a set number of hours and I'm producing something at the end of the day, I don't have to think about it when I go home, right?
Yeah.
That's just I can change directions. And one of the things I've done is to give structure to my day, I took on a minimum wage support job, right? It
Yeah.
gives me a time to do something simple. I have a task, someone tells me what's expected of me, and I just simply do that thing. And it gives
Yes.
me freedom in the rest of my structure. Go ahead.
Yeah. I remember us talking about that, and that's the thing. I've talked to other entrepreneur friends where it's like we love it, we love what we're doing, but sometimes you just want to take a week off, not to rest, but to just go like DoorDash, like, or just
Yes.
go do something mindless. And I mean, not no disrespect to DoorDashers, but like just something that doesn't require so much of your own insight. Like you do kind of want that like order taking. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I can do it a million times,
Mhm.
over and over type thing. Um, I had a
Eh,
thought on something you said about they're hiring you like you are basically the product. I dream
Right.
about my clients and my clients' projects half the time. Like, yeah, your brain does not shut off, it doesn't get away from it. And I see so much advice, which is completely accurate as far as like wellness and like a lot of writers, especially, and I'm sure it's probably the same with other, creatives, is if you've hit like burnout or you've hit a stall, like go take a walk, like go take a walk for 15 to 30 minutes. That's still like work time because you have to clear your mind. 100% agree with that. But I'm also like, is walking the only thing we're allowed to do? Like, is that the only, like acceptable brain space? Like, it seems so, I don't know, just like the right thing to do that I presented the other day like, hey, let's also watch Survivor if we want to for 15 minutes. Like get your
Mhm.
brain off of it and do something else that I feel like can be just as useful as taking a walk around the block, and if it's
Yeah.
not as hot outside.
I would say that I think it doesn't matter what you're doing as long as it can get your focus off the thing you're trying to focus on. Like
Yeah.
walking for me, when I'm walking is or running, well, not so much running. I don't like running. Um
I don't like running either.
yeah, well, it makes me tired.
Hmm.
Anyways, so walking feels like I'm making progress. And
Yeah.
so, because I'm physically changing my place constantly, my mind is seeing a difference over time, and that keeps my mind going. Sometimes, like when I was doing CrossFit, one of the things I loved about it is you only are focused on making the weight do the thing you want it to do, or making your
Yeah.
body do the thing and you're not thinking about whatever, right?
Yeah.
So it gives your brain a real break because now it's focusing on your meat instead of
Mhm.
on your ethereal, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, it walking is definitely great, and sometimes that is exactly what I need just to get out of the house, not even, like, be staring at my computer anymore. Other times, and this could be said of any probably type of, like, mindfulness exercise, but sometimes I'm like, "Okay, we're walking, we're not stressed. We're walking, we're not stressed. We're walking, we're not stressed." And then I'm still just as stressed the whole entire time, like, I feel like that can help happen with, journaling or meditation, like, "Okay, I'm gonna do the thing I'm supposed to do, and it's gonna like magically work, and sometimes it doesn't, and then it's like, what do you do then? You either get back into your work, or you try something else. I think it's just having a good toolbox, and I guess my case is that the toolbox can be a little bit more fun and whatever anybody wants it to be, but that's neither here nor there, just things I'm learning in my copywriting entrepreneurial journey.
That's that's great. I mean, I think that anything that allows us to, I don't want to be so productive that I don't have time for play, because play
Yeah,
is what generates creativity. And in my perspective, I don't know about other people, but if I'm stuck and I need ideas, I want to go ride a one wheel. I don't even own a one wheel. I just dream about having one and enjoying the joys of riding a one wheel. So I rented
yeah.
one and
Okay.
I drove it around and it was fantastic. I fell and busted up my elbow. Took me way
Oh,
back to
no.
being a kid. But it was I enjoyed it. Made my feet tired, right? So all the dreams of riding around on a one wheel met the reality of your feet are doing work while you're doing that thing. And so
Yeah,
um it grounded me to that experience. It was very enjoyable, but now I don't have a one wheel because I only rented it.
yeah,
uh but I don't have $2,500 to spend on something that I feel is a luxury, but maybe it's not a
yeah.
luxury. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
maybe it's a good investment if it, breaks up your day and can help you do better work. That's how I
Yeah,
try to think of those things sometimes, but I'm with you on that. I've learned that since I enjoy variety and that I can sometimes struggle to I don't know what it is. It's not I'm happy to, like, commit to things, but I think then since I like the variety, then I pull back or I look for something else, and one thing that I've enjoyed because I've been saying forever that I wanna, like, exercise more, but it's hard for me to, decide, like, every time I'm like, "I should get up earlier in the morning and walk around the neighborhood," and then I don't do it. So I bought a 10 class package at a dance studio. It's called Adrenaline Dance Fitness for anyone in the Greenville area, and since it's the class
say that one
package
more time. You said it really fast.
sorry, I am a fast talker. It's Adrenaline Dance Fitness for
Okay,
anybody
cool.
in Greenville.
Yeah.
Um, and I got the 10 class package instead of a membership because I know it expires within, I think, 6 months. And every time I redeem it, I know that like I just paid, technically in my mind, like I just paid this much for this class. It's on my schedule. I have to go instead of just like, oh, I can go whenever and I can do whatever. Like it makes me kind of sit down every single time and make the conscious choice that I'm going to go do it. And I found that to be really helpful instead of deciding like I'm going to have this new hobby and this is exactly what it is. I just know that at least 10 times within 6 months, I'm going to go try this dance class and have a great time. And I do other stuff too. Like I walk with friends, I go on, little hikes and like stuff like that. But that's something that I feel like I can schedule, but not feel chained down to doing, and that's been fun.
Yeah, I find that
So maybe you rent the one-wheeler, like, 3 times a year or 4 times a year,
yeah, but financially speaking, if I rent it 3 times, I might as well buy
then
it.
you paid for it? Okay, I
Yeah.
gotcha.
So, but the I also will go fly a drone. I have different kinds
Yeah.
of drones. And I do drone flying for financial gain. I did it for TV shows and I do it for homes.com. They sent me a drone for free so that,
Oh,
I get to
cool.
do it for fun. And fun and profit. but I can go if I'm typing something out and I'm a horrible writer, horrible writer. Not my content is good. I'm just bad at seeing grammar and spelling and that kind of stuff. So when I as a reward for doing something difficult, I will go fly my drone,
Mhm.
a racing drone, because it's fast and low and I can get zip in between things and it's a little bit risky, which, you know, writing is not that risky unless someone, well, that's not true. Unless you're Suleiman Rushdie, writing can be very dangerous, but um you know, it gives my mind a different thing. You know, I
Yeah,
just want a different thing to be and do. And
yeah,
then I can come back to something later. And then, but you know, you're right. Like, how do I keep the production? Like, I need to finish things. I have lots of
yeah.
hanging chads out there of
Mhm.
ideas I've started. And if you're a CEO of a company, that's great because you got a guy for that or a girl for that or a
Yeah.
chef. And you, you know what I mean? Like you can pay to have your distracted mind catered to. But
Mhm.
no one's volunteering to cater to my distracted mind. So I've got to actually buckle myself down. I don't know.
Yeah. So for me, at least as far as making the decision to hire a VA,
Mm-hmm.
and that is not necessarily the best for everybody, but I just kind of had to look at like that opportunity cost of, is this stuff never going to get done? And how much is it going to cost me if it doesn't get done? Is it going to take up my nights and weekends? Or if I pay somebody, you know, X amount and it does get done, will that make me more profitable? And for my case, it was. And I was blown away at how much faster my VA was at these things because that's her wheelhouse. Excuse me. And so for me, it just worked that way. And I will say, since she's a contractor, I don't feel responsible for like, you know, her whole entire livelihood. I'm not responsible to employ her full time.
Mm-hmm.
We started, I think, at like 10 hours a month and then went down to 5 hours a month. And now we're kind of creeping back up to 10 hours a month. But excuse me, the value, and I feel like me having her for 5 hours a month saves me like 30 hours a month for just how fast she is and like the stuff that she gets done that would take me way too long. So
Did
that's my
you
only
find
thoughts
her
on,
through
I
a
guess, the hiring
service?
case. No, so she actually had hired me. And I found that people that I hire I tend to have worked for them first. So I have two VAs actually. My main VA that I've been talking about, she's my admin VA and she takes care of like my systems and like just all the admin stuff that I struggle with. I have another VA who I also contract who does more creative things. Like she was sourcing client gifts for me for a while and then she does graphics as well. She's really just awesome and does lots of like creative gift are things that are like I'm still creative, but it'll take me forever, or I just don't want to do it.
Right.
Like even sourcing client gifts, like I would give her their intake form and she would come up with options. Whereas if I'm looking for a gift for somebody, I will spend like 4 hours like trying to find the perfect thing and never really getting anywhere, and then it never comes off my task list.
Yeah.
And kind of the same with graphics. Like I might start and do like two of them, and then after that, I'm like, I have client work to do. I just don't feel like I can spend the time. Um, I forgot what I was talking about though. So my VAs and how I found them. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, so both of them had actually hired me to write emails for their different businesses. And so we just kind of already had that established relationship. And my someone I just hired to be my accountant, they had also hired me for email campaigns. And so I feel like through that relationship, and I know that's not necessarily like a best hiring practice, like make
Mm-hmm.
sure people pay you and then hire them for yourself. Like that's not necessarily repeatable for everybody, and I get that. But that's just kind of how it worked out for me because I had a great insight into their business and how they worked. And then I could tell if they were like personal, and communication is huge for me. I will say specifically for my the accountant that I hired, they would actually email me back, whereas I had tried to work with other accountants before, you know, to get my stuff together, and like even just getting an initial meeting was like impossible and the communication just really lacked. So thankfully by having that client, I was able to see, you know, this person actually takes their business communications really seriously, and so I want them to take care of my business finances. So
Right. Yeah, that's that I think that is probably an excellent way to find people or at least um other entrepreneurial professionals, right? Like
yes.
if you would use their service and they like the work that you do, that seems like a win-win scenario for both of you.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I need to find an accountant because I'm terrible at it. I paid more taxes than Donald Trump, so I need to find
Oh no.
a better tax preparer.
Well, see, this is where I will just say in my with that was a big difference in me choosing this accountant is when I had the tax preparer mindset, I was struggling to catch up with all of my books and get them ready to hope that my taxes worked out okay. So now I'm bringing somebody in. It's September now. I haven't moved to like quarterly tax filings yet. So
Yeah.
I kind of want them to help me get everything together now so that when tax time comes, they already know my business, they already know my expenses, and they can advise me much earlier on instead of me getting to April 15th and being like, oh, I dang it, like, stuff like that. I'm looking for kind of that type of support, which let me just say, I hope this does not sound well, I don't know, it wouldn't be bad if it sounded this way, but I am not like an ultra successful person that's grabbing all these people to do all this work for me. I'm doing like the very bare minimum in each of these areas just to support me the tiniest bit. Because I know I've been in business a little over a year, and if I'm gonna continue to do well and serve my clients really well, I have to have it. So
Hmm.
it is a luxury in a sense, but it's also I feel like a need at this point for me to be successful.
So did you is it once you got enough success under your belt that you started reaching out to these people, or have you decided that to be successful you need to have this so that you can focus on the thing you're good at?
Um, so working backwards, my accountant, I definitely feel like I got to a point where I was like, I feel like I could like this is viable for me. Um, like I could still do everything myself, but I am at a point where I've had a couple really good months and felt like I think now's a good time to hire an accountant. As far as when I hired my VA, I felt like I was kind of at that crossroads of I can keep stressing out and feeling unprofitable trying to do the things I'm doing, or I can take a chance and hire somebody and see how that goes. And taking that chance, I felt like showed me how rewarding and valuable her services are to me.
Hmm.
Um, this just turned into my VA is awesome podcast. um, but yeah, it was not, it was when I saw it as more of like a need and I took that risk and it was extremely helpful. And I think that that was influenced by some other copywriters that I know that had talked about like how do you avoid burnout? And
Hmm.
almost all of them said start to get help, like get the support that you need so that you can do your best creative work and not be bogged down and then, burn out and suffer as a result of trying to do everything yourself. I mean, entrepreneur is definitely that like trailblazing, I'm on my own, I'm the visionary like thing, but I feel like we don't have to be stuck if we don't want to. Like that's the thing
Hmm.
about being the boss is like we are the boss to decide how that works. So,
Yeah, and I think we need to let die the idea the entrepreneur does everything by themselves.
yeah.
Because while I can do a lot of the things that I do, um, nobody does anything by themselves. I need a client, right? Because
Mhm.
I can generate content all day long, and that's what an influencer does nowadays,
Yeah.
or that's what a YouTuber does, is they generate content, but they still need a subscriber. They still need someone that consumes it. I need to have, my wife takes care of the things that my wife takes care of in our life.
Yeah.
I have uh I have people that introduce me to people. So entrepreneur, the responsibility is on us, but we don't have to be alone in the process.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that's I think that's a good observation for us to carry on with. Um, how do you handle scalability? Because, like I said, I'm the product, so I can only be in one physical space at a time. and unless I invent my doppelganger to go out and do work for me.
Yeah.
How can you scale what you do?
That is a great question. And it a lot of copywriters take different avenues because it depends on what the scale means. So some people look at scaling as having an agency so they can still always take, every single client that comes to them, but then
Mm-hmm.
they have a team of writers. And so that team of writers becomes, like the doers of the business, and they just become the CEO and they start an agency, and then maybe they hire, designers or social media people or whatever. For me personally, scaling has looked more like being a little bit more mindful of the work that I do want to do. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not one that's trying to scale. Like, I feel like other entrepreneurs scale, or copywriters anyway, scale by client, like, income. So some people might start writing for small businesses and then they write for, huge companies, and that's how they feel like they've scaled their business because they did more types of work, and then they just get, huge big fish clients. I've had the privilege of kind of working in both arenas, and I found that I actually like the smaller business side of things. My only like niche is that I work for people with strong personal brands. I learned that I don't like to be, behind the curtain of a big corporation. That's just not what I enjoy. I don't think it's as fun. I can't get all that fun, exciting personality stuff.
Right.
Um, and so for me, scaling for me has looked like being clear on who I'm working with, which is someone who's going to put themselves out there. They're willing to, start an email list and actually email them. They are looking to have a website that sounds like them and make it clear that like they are the product. Or they're, maybe they're going into the online business side of things where they have been working one-on-one and now they're launching like products and courses and things that anyone who lands on their page can just kind of like buy and do self-paced.
Mm-hmm.
But that person specifically has been in business for probably, I'd say 2 to 5 years, to where they're at the point where they understand the value of getting that support. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
they're budgeting for it, they're ready to invest in it, so that I have it really clear in my head who I'm working with and who is a good fit and who isn't a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's helped me have like referral business. It's helped me have repeat clients. And that's how I feel like I've grown, is by kind of carving out that clear, place for me to exist in
Right.
the big sea of people that need copywriting.
Right.
And that's how I've scaled, and it's been a lot of fun.
Um, AI is making inroads to everything, right?
Yes.
They're the robots are coming. And my experience with them is that they're not a replacement for a person; they're an augment to a
Yeah.
person. How do you look at AI copywriting tools? And do you feel that that's a threat to your business, or do you feel like that might be a tool that might be helpful to you to increase your personal throughput?
Okay, so AI copywriting, I feel like it depends on the person's expectation on it. I don't believe that AI copywriting or writing robots are ever going to fully replace copywriters. I do think it's going to change the process the same way that like transcription services became automated.
Mm-hmm.
I think it speeds up things, which is pretty cool. You can kind of get like a closer foundation. So maybe the robot can get you from like A to J,
Right.
but you still have to do K through Z. I don't believe that it's ever going to provide like an A to Z service. Does that cut out maybe some people that were really doing a lot in the A to J, part of the alphabet? Maybe, but I think those people are just going to shift to the other side of the alphabet. Um, so for me personally, as a writer, I don't think I could get to a point where I am utilizing AI copywriting a lot, but too early in saying that, because I do use transcription services. Like if I have a recorded meeting with somebody, I throw it into Otter AI, and then I have notes for the call, and that's really helpful. Um, but as far as with client work, I don't know that I would utilize it. And then for my own communication, like when I'm, making my posts on LinkedIn or I'm sending emails to my lists, I don't think that I would use it, but maybe I will. I feel like copywriters should just be prepared and mindful of what AI can bring to the table and not be, ignorant or like defiant about it, because I don't think that's going to help. But on the
Hmm.
other hand, I do think it's a little hopeful for clients to be like, oh, I'm never going to need a copywriter. I have AI now. Like, I don't know if that's going to work either. So we'll see. You kind of have to give it time and see what happens.
Yeah, my experience with AI generated art, right? Which,
Yeah.
when I have actually gotten simpler in the way I try and generate art, because as a art director or creative director, the idea is to communicate where I want things to go so that another person can do the work of getting it there. Because if I'm doing the whole thing, then I'm not doing much direction. I'm just doing the thing.
Yeah.
Um, but in AI artwork, I find that it's getting me to a place where I don't have to do a lot of things. All I need to do is clean up the details, because they'll have eyes that have irises that are bigger than the eyeball should be, or
Yeah.
the nostrils will be floating above their lip, right?
Yeah.
So, it's not the AI's job to tell us what people look like. That's what people do.
Right.
So, um,
Exactly.
so I'm able to make the AI art work for me, because I'm using it to do the level of work it can do. And the
Yeah.
two of us together are better artists overall.
Yeah. I feel like any AI tools can be like supplemental, partners in our business. So that's why I don't feel like we need to like write them off, because they
Hmm.
can help us to get things done. But I don't think they'll ever you know, replace
People.
what the human craft can do.
Right. I agree. I mean, AI wouldn't be able to do what it does if it didn't have the thousands of years of humans learning to do what we want AI to do. Right. So,
Exactly.
um, but
And I mean, there's the concept of originality too. Like, how original can you make a robot to create original things? Like, a robot can never think something out of nothing. So if we're giving it enough to do it, then it can get close and it can do something cool. But you can't teach, well, maybe I'm wrong. I hope this isn't like a doomsday prophecy, but you can't teach a robot to imagine. So I feel like that's something that the human element is always going to have an advantage in our imaginative capabilities.
well, I don't know if a computational machine learning intelligence, if you can call it that, um, will or won't be able to do something what we call original, because more than likely whatever is of interest to an AI, if it has autonomy, may or may not be of interest to a human being. So,
Yeah.
um, I think human beings have to determine what's of interest to us, and then AI, if it ever, if computational intelligence ever becomes um, autonomous, then
Yeah.
they will have their own jokes that will make sense, and it will probably be in binary. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
That's
Like,
true. Yes, that's true. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like if you like have a robot come up with like a formula to tell a joke or something, like it just might not land the right way. So you
uh,
never know.
or you have to start thinking like a robot to understand the joke. That could be also an
Yes.
interesting expansion. Like,
Oh no. So what if we just all become robots? That's the thing. We're afraid that robots are going to become us, but what if we become them?
actually, one of the things I have been experimenting with as a writer, because like I said, I have a fear of writing, and because I don't express myself well in text. So one of the things that I have been teaching myself how to write is, okay, all you got to do is write one word, but that one word needs to be so interesting it demands a second. And that second word has to be so indistinct that it demands a qualifier. And then eventually I have a sentence, right? And then hopefully that sentence is so interesting that it begs me to make another sentence to explain it. That's that's how I'm trying to trick myself into wanting to write. Doesn't make me better at grammar, doesn't make me better at spelling,
Yeah.
but it does make me unafraid to begin the process so that I have something to edit.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. At first, I was like, that sounds like so much pressure to come up with such a great word. I feel like that would almost have the opposite effect on me. I'd be like, just one word? How do I do that? Because I'm a talker, as you can tell. But if that's what works for you to get going, I feel like sometimes it's kind of, yeah, getting started. Like for a project, if I'm like, okay, I just need to write the outline, then
Hmm.
all of a sudden paragraphs will flow. And it just kind of works out that way.
Yeah, I was talking with a script writer. I wrote a script. I read a script that he's written. We've been in dialogue for a while. Um, and I know what I can see the film in my mind,
Yeah.
but writing a film on paper so that other people can see what's in my mind
Hmm.
is a different skill, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I needed to have enough there for them to get the idea of where I'm going so
Yeah.
that they could then, it's like your interview process for your copy clients. I had to give them enough so that they and then I had to give them additional voice information and then describe my themes and input
Yeah.
all that. And he's like, I'm a sense maker. Where's your outline? I'm like, oh my God, I had to write 58 pages of a script to even figure out that I needed an outline. And now I need
Yeah.
to go make an outline.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny. There's such, I feel like, give and take within that type of process because at the beginning, you need somebody else to fill the gaps. But then
Mhm.
when they do fill the gaps, sometimes you're like, oh, that wasn't what I was thinking. Like I've had that happen a few times where I've had like a page designed and I was like, oh, there's no way you would have known that I don't like this certain thing.
Mhm.
Kind of forgot that I didn't like that until now I'm seeing it in front of me. And I think that that can happen in different like art processes of it's really annoying when someone doesn't know what they want, but it's easier to like look at something that already exists and start changing things and taking them away instead of having it crystal clear from the beginning. And that's why revisions are always part of the process. Um, and that's just kind of a helpful way that things happen because if somebody had it figured out from the beginning, then they probably would have just done it themselves. So
Right.
yeah.
How do you manage a client? Like I have a client and they're so afraid of doing the thing wrong
Hmm.
that they won't make a choice. Like I'll do all the work to say, this is about you. So it's either A or B, but you need to make a choice of A or B. And they're
Yeah.
like, I don't want to make the wrong choice. So I trust you entirely.
Yeah.
Um, how do you handle that situation?
So I have to handle that with their audience. I have to know enough about what their customers are like looking for, resonating with, what they're interested in to at least make an informed decision. It's
Mm-hmm.
perfectly fine to have to choose between two things. Um, Having maybe a right or wrong outcome is always a little scary. That's why so much of the advertising world is based on testing.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of removes that fear. Is it always going to be there? Yes, because you want everything to sell out and be amazing and make $1 million. But sometimes you just have to see what works and see if it keeps going. So I'd say for like that is part of my process. Not only do I have pretty heavy and thorough intake with my client and their personality, I also give them basically like a testimonial grabber that they send to their clients. It's branded in their colors, so it looks like it's coming, straight from them, even though I created it. And it captures from them like what are things that you struggled with before you started working with me? Why did you choose to work with me? What have you seen as like progress or a result of our work together? Is there anything you didn't expect, etc.? And gathering all that information is extremely helpful because for me, I might have a client that's like, oh, people choose to work with me because, I have a degree from Harvard and I have all these accolades and they trust my professionalism and that's why they choose to work with me. If I get their client testimonials or their client feedback survey and they say, I chose them because they went to Harvard, that validates what they said, right? So cool, we're on the same page. That's what we're doing. If I get from their clients, um, every time I got a call with them, they were an amazing listener and I felt like they really understood what I was struggling with. I'm going to use that copy. I'm going to spend way more time talking about how this person makes them feel understood and heard and all that jazz versus all their accolades. So then if a client comes to me and I write copy, like, hey, I'm thinking, like, say I do the outline that says these are the things that your customer mentioned, and this is kind of the direction I'm going in the copy. And they're like, oh, I thought we were going to talk how much I went to Harvard. I can pull up their client testimonials and say, we definitely can talk about that if you want to, but I do have this research that backs up, these points. And then from that point, you can just say, so let's test it and let's see how people react, and just kind of go from there. And I know that can be hard for somebody investing in a service because everybody wants everything guaranteed. Everybody wants, things to be right the first time. But sometimes I think you do have to leave some room for research and testing and trying things out. And maybe it's not, okay, now we're going to do your whole entire website. Maybe it's like, let's throw out some LinkedIn posts and see, if people resonate more with these, different things. And that's not necessarily part of my process, but that could be if somebody was in that dilemma where they really were unsure. I would probably take a step back and say, like, well, let's test some things before we get all the way down the rabbit hole. I don't know if that's helpful for you in the work that you do, but sometimes you can kind of, I don't know, just formulate some cases.
Yeah. One of the things, I mean, since I'm a multidisciplinarian, one of the things that I often have to deal with is, as an entrepreneur at the level that I'm at, sometimes I'm people's first brush with the process. Like they are not
Yeah.
educated at all about how to do this. They think a 10-second clip is a 10-second clip, but what they
Yep.
don't understand is sometimes 10 seconds takes 5 hours,
Yeah.
right? So it's always, I feel like I'm always the rock that people break the wave of misunderstanding on.
Yeah.
And I have to spend a lot of time educating the client about not about my problems, because the client doesn't care about the problems with producing the work. What I need them to understand is that there's a process to it, and that process is why things cost the way they cost, or why I'm suggesting, hey, this is a fantastic idea. It's going to cost you $5 million, right? And they think I'm just going to take that $5 million and put it in my pocket, and the thing magically happens. And I'm like, no, that $5 million is because you want talking elephants riding a motorcycle while spinning plates,
Yeah.
and it's a simple thing to see, but it's not a simple thing to make.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And that's where sometimes it's like, here's the proposal for that, but proposal, if you don't want to, or you don't have the budget to invest in the talking elephants, for your budget we can do a 10-second talking head where you just say, I am this company and I do this work. And sure, that's your 10-second video for $15 or something. Like,
Right.
yeah, there's definitely that understanding of like, if you want it to be absolutely amazing, this is the investment that comes into. And it's not just like, oh, I pressed record on my phone and I stole your $5 million. Like, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I mean, I've worked with founders of companies that have these grand ideas about the way to talk about their product. And, I'm on board for that. Like, I want to make crazy stuff. I want to have this wild, fun stuff on my reel and in my resume. But oftentimes, if I want that kind of stuff, no one wants to pay for it. So I have to go and make that for myself, right? To
Yeah.
say, hey, this is my capability. You're using this much of it, but I have this, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's difficult for people to understand, that you maybe can be more for them than what they're asking you to be. Sometimes you just need to be what they're asking you to be.
Yes. Yes. And I think that that's where, for me, I've had to be mindful of the clients that I choose to work with and then I know have those expectations. So for the accountant that I hired, who is like an amazing tax strategist, and I have another client who is also in the tax arena, but they sell like courses and memberships, very two different people. But both my clients. I would never in a million years be like, I want to be the copywriter for tax professionals. Absolutely not. I both of these clients because they're super fun. They're putting themselves out there. They understand, the value of what I bring to the table. And so they're amazing clients. And so I feel like as people try to figure out like, well, where do you get the good clients and stuff? And it's like, well, define good. Like, does that mean that they're gonna, pay your rate, except it's gonna be the most boring work you've ever done in your life? Does it mean that they're gonna be super fun, but they don't have a budget? How do you find something in the middle that works for you where you can use your talents like to the best of your ability? Um, and sometimes it's not 100% of the clients. Like you might find 30% of clients that you absolutely love and the other 70% pays the bills, or
Mm-hmm.
vice versa. Maybe you have 70% of clients that are like the best ever and then you just kind of make up the rest with the other 30%, or your numbers are totally different. um but yeah, it's kind of a struggle, the creative entrepreneurship of like, how do I put food on the table and make sure that I'm being used well?
Mm. Yeah, I always want to be of service. I always want to help uh, increase the knowledge of my clients, but sometimes my clients don't want their knowledge increased and they just want the output.
Nothing. Yeah.
Um, which that's always difficult to ascertain. I was speaking with another gentleman on the podcast, Howie Nostell. He runs a marketing company, but he goes, you have either you're training your client or your client's training you.
Hmm.
And I've always been one to try and train my client, but there was a point where I found myself being trained by the client because I'd gotten out of step with what the deliverable needed to be, what the expectation of the deliverable needed to be.
Yeah.
Um, so it's always a tightrope walk. Like this client's going to be this way and this client's going to be this way. They may be presenting the same signals, the same red flags, but they're not the
Yeah.
same. It's not the same concern. I'm just seeing a problem presenting itself as the same, but the reality is they wanted something different. And
Yeah.
I was not able to get at the thing that they actually wanted because they couldn't tell me what they wanted until the end of the process, you know?
Yes. Yes. I've been there. And
Eh,
that is probably the most frustrating and rough part of things, because you're ready to be in there as an expert. And if they can't trust you, like we were saying, it does take some risk to trust somebody. But if
mm-hmm.
that trust isn't there, that's really difficult. And I will say there's some clients that I think start out as maybe order givers and they're kind of like, no, I just want it this way. But then as you kind of establish the relationship, you can bring different ideas. And I know that was kind of my experience with my VA. I was just like, okay, I just need you to like do some invoicing. And then she brought so much more to the table that as I, kept giving some of that trust, I was like wowed. And so now I'm just like, I'll give you everything. Like, just take over my business. Like, just let me know when I need to write, type things. And so yeah, it's hard to navigate all of that stuff. I always feel like when I have conversations with other creatives that we're going to talk about like super creative stuff, and I always have to talk about the business side of things, because that's where we get stuck. Like we just want to do fun work and we're trying to figure out the rest.
Well, let's switch gears because we've covered a lot of business stuff, a lot of
Yeah.
entrepreneurial, self-employment stuff. Let's talk about something creative. What do you do to refresh your creative engine in your craft? Like, how do you advance your craft?
Yeah. Okay, advancing my craft has changed back into that play mindset. Like I've read the books and I am still reading them. I listen to the podcast, I do whatever, but I feel like for me, I'm having to embrace the creative side of things. So in the type of work that I do, it's very, very sales focused. And so there are some like techniques and formulas that like inform my copywriting. Um, on my downtime, like I'm not writing poems, but I am trying to find ways to challenge myself, whether it's, like I said, making my office space like a little bit more messy. Like I am ready to rip stuff out of magazines and throw it around and make it look cool. And I think I'm finding ways to advance my craft away from my craft. Like I don't feel like I need
Mm.
to write more. I feel like I need more brain stimulation, like more imagination, more great stories. I am probably a better writer because of the fiction books that I've read, even though I don't write any fiction whatsoever. I'm
Yeah.
better from the fiction that I'm reading and from the shows I'm watching and the movies I'm watching. And like going outside and just like looking at a bird and being like, what is that bird thinking? Like just using my imagination and finding ways to play is helping me advance my craft more than the practice of it. Like I know everybody talks about like practice and you get better, but when it's your bread and butter, you're always practicing. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no time to really write for fun. And when you're writing all the time, you want to bring the fun into the client work. Like I don't
Right.
want to not enjoy my client work and then be like, now I'm going to write for fun. Like, no, I want my client work to be fun. And so I just find ways outside of that. I started playing Animal Crossing a lot lately, which probably isn't actually informing my craft at all, but it is giving my brain something else to do and feel productive. And yeah, it's really less strategic, but it's kind of how I'm working and looking for fun.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to approach it, because once you get the rote memorization down of your times tables, right? Like you
Yeah,
don't to practice your times tables can be boring. And what are you going to do? You're just going to be able to repeat a set of timetables. But if you want to work on an equation, you need to go figure out how those times tables make an equation work,
yeah,
you know? So I'm great with my camera. I understand what to do technically with a camera and with a crew and with all these things. But what I'm really needing to do is to do more seeing and listening so that I can feed the craft side of what I do.
yeah.
I have a podcast coming out with a gentleman who's a knife smith,
Oh,
and
cool.
we had an argument about what is mastery, what is craftsmanship, and what is the mark of, say, a master of a craft. And I'm like, well, it's about the quality of your output. And he goes,
Hmm.
no, what it is about knowing the level of effort it takes to make the output you want to get. So instead of spending 1,000 hours on a thing, what you're doing is, I'm going to make 1,000 things one an hour. And the difference,
Gotcha.
and the difference between those two ideas is that a craftsman will work on a one object until it is perfect. And what they're doing is they're constantly sculpting on that thing. Whereas a master is someone that knows, okay, if I want to make 1,000 of these things, I can't give each one 10,000 hours.
Yeah,
So it's about choosing the output effort to the input effort, I
yeah,
guess, if I'm going to be computer about it. Um, but I would never have approached it that way, because what I do is so crafting. Like I'm crafting the pitch, I'm crafting the boards, I'm crafting the production processes, dealing with the nuances on set, I'm crafting the edit and post for the delivery to present to an audience, everything at one of those stages. But all of those have time limitations. I don't have
yeah,
endless amounts of hours to pitch, to storyboard, to plan, or to be on set. Like, each one of those stages has a level of effort that has a time limit on it.
yeah,
So I can't be a craftsman. I need to be a master of my craft.
yeah. That is really fascinating to think about because in the type of writing that I do, since it's so sales focused, my value is often, did it sell the thing? Like, did
Mm-hmm.
it exceed the expectations of what this was going to sell? If I'm writing, an email sequence for someone who they just hosted a webinar, and then every single email that the attendees are going to get after that are going to be about joining their membership or buying their course or something. Is my writing crafted well? Am I a master at my craft? If they sell, if they convert enough people into their product or whatever, if they sell enough. Or is my value in, I wrote a poem and it is going to change hearts for centuries to come. Or am I great at my craft because someday somebody gets a hold of my journal and they think my story is amazing and it, becomes a book and my legacy goes on for years. Like that
Right.
is really interesting to think about from a writing perspective is what makes my craft valuable? Is it because I can sell things with it? Is it because I can imagine with it? Is it because I can just talk to my own human experience? Like, I love thinking about this. So
Yeah.
this is going to keep me up at night in a good way, in a good
Well,
way, but that's
uh,
cool.
I feel like I've had a wonderful time having a conversation with you. I think that if anyone is looking for personal copyright experience, I can't imagine who else I would recommend over you. Um, so I would like to bring our time to a close because as a craftsman and as a master of my craft, I realize I have other things to get
We
done
have
today.
stuff to do. Yes. Yeah.
Is there
I love
anything
this.
that
This
you
has
would
been
like to?
wonderful.
Oh, good, good. So is there anything that you would want to close out the podcast with?
I just want to say thank you so much for having me. This has been really, really fun. I feel like we covered so much, and I just really enjoyed it. So if anybody wants to find me, I'm on LinkedIn. My first name Juliet, Juliet, last name Peay, spelled Peay, and I'm always down to have a conversation, whether it's on a podcast or not. So come find
Uh,
me, and thank you, Trinity, for letting me be here.
Absolutely. And folks, please um, troll me in the comments. Do not like or subscribe to my channel because that will give me a big head. Instead, I want to know all the things I do wrong. And I really appreciate your time. And we're going to close it out in 3, 2, 1.